We have to prepare for a timely 3 o'clock start, but we do have an opportunity to take a few questions.
If you could talk about this, Chairman, and also Madam Speaker, if you would address it as well. I'm just wondering how concerned you are with the White House in their role in the passage of the $15 minimum wage. Do you feel that President Biden has offered a true strategy to making that happen, especially given the ruling by the parliamentarian and how it's unlikely to be part.
Well, I'll just briefly say that the administration put forth a transformative American Rescue Plan. It contained the $15 minimum wage. We believe that that is the right approach, as evidenced by the fact that it was in the legislation that we passed. But the House is the House, and the Senate is the Senate. They have a process, they have a parliamentarian, and I'm not going to speak on what their process will yield, other than to say, as I think the Speaker has made clear, we're committed to making sure that we raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour. It's the wealthiest country in the history of the world. The notion that anyone is working full-time, trying to raise a family, and making $7.25 should not be acceptable to anyone in the United States of America.
The fight for 15 is one that many of us have been involved in for a few years. And just because this may not survive the Senate right now, doesn't mean that that fight is anywhere near over. So we will continue to use whatever legislative options are available to us. It is wildly popular among the American people in a bipartisan, nonpartisan way. Democrats, Republicans, independents, and the rest support raising the minimum wage. I come to this with experience. When Steny and Mr. Clyburn and I raised the minimum wage in 2006. Well, we won in 2006. We passed it in 2007. In the first 100 hours, not days, hours of that new majority that we had. We passed it, $7.25 an hour. It hadn't been raised in 11 years. And now it's been a long time since it has been raised, and we are determined to get the job done for the American people. This pathetic minimum wage, $7.25 all these years later, is really a gift to underwrite those who will not, who are exploiting their workers in many respects. Some people just can't afford, businesses just can't afford to pay the full $15, and we want to help them. But by and large, people are getting food stamps, they're getting Medicaid, they're getting housing assistance and the rest because their employers are not paying a decent wage. So again, for the taxpayer to save money from all of those expenditures, for the workers so that they can put food on the table when they work full time, and for the businesses, especially the small businesses that need help in meeting that goal, we will be passing minimum wage. And the White House was right out there with it very early. We have no complaint about what they have done.
But there's clearly members of your conference that are concerned that this particular opportunity is your best opportunity, including many of your progressive members.
That this is our best opportunity?
Right, passing through reconciliation with the
Well, we'll have other reconciliation. We'll have other reconciliation. But let me just say this, because I think this is really important. This bill, as Mr. Aguilar referenced, this bill, this American Rescue Plan, is spectacular. It has so much in it to put vaccinations in the arms of the American people, money in the pockets of our families, children in school, workers in jobs. This is excellent. So let's not be diverted into thinking of what's not in, but let's respect it for what is in, and it is spectacular. Now, we were also present in 2009. The House had a bill that was $1.1 trillion. The Senate cut it back $300 billion. So people say, what lesson did you learn by not going big enough? No, we did go big enough, but it was cut back by about a third, a little more than a third, when it went over to the Senate side in order to get bipartisan support. We value that, but if we had stayed big, we would have had a bigger recovery then. This is a big bill for a bigger recovery. In fact, in light of a pandemic, just what this country needs. It meets the needs of the American people.
I think we have to take
We have some other questions. We're not going to have a conversation.
I issued a statement on this issue and made clear that these allegations are very serious against Governor Cuomo, made by serious individuals, and deserve a serious and independent investigation. Now that the Attorney General has taken over the investigation, it will be fully independent and thorough, and I await the results of that investigation.
I associate myself with the gentleman.
You guys are going into this conference, you're against sort of the legislative tempo with adding another work week. How much of that is sort of, this is both for Speaker and for yourself, is basically in response to the ghost of 1994 and 2010, when we lost chambers in the
Well, I'm just going to yield to the Speaker and Steny on the schedule. But obviously, I think as Jim indicated, these are challenging times, and so we're going to act in a bold fashion. And in order to be able to do that, we have to get to work, not fly off to Florida, but actually get to work for the people, because the level of pain and suffering and death that they are experiencing is extraordinary. And that's the only thing that's driving us.
Let me say, it has nothing to do with 94. It has nothing to do with 2006. It has to do with 2020 and 2021 and the challenges we face from COVID-19, which demand action. Systemic racism demands action. Infrastructure investment demands action. I can go into a lot of the other issues that I mentioned earlier, but Jim Clyburn would say I would speak too long. So it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what's in front of us and dealing with it, so that the people know that we're there fighting for them and their families, their children, their future.
As you may be aware, some of our members saw some people here the day before January 6th. It was at a time when we were told not to even bring family members to the Capitol because there would be no tours or taking our families around. But yet these people were there, and they had to be there as the guest of a member or staff of a member's office. So those members who saw those people have conveyed what they saw to law enforcement, and they're looking into that. They feel comfortable that what they conveyed is being addressed. That's all I can say about that.
Thank you, for both yourselves. I wanted to focus on H.R. 1 and then the George Floyd Policing Act being brought up again. So I wonder, how is it different from last Congress to this Congress? Because when you go to the Senate, you still need 60 votes. 60 votes still aren't apparently there. And so have Democrats maybe oversold what they could accomplish with control of both chambers?
No, I'll let everybody jump in on this, but I mean, I think we have a House Democratic majority. We have a change in occupancy at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The king of obstruction is no longer in charge in the Senate. It's a very different landscape handed to us by the American people because they want things done, like defending our democracy, H.R. 1, or transforming policing in a way that brings the police and the community together and lifts up the principle of equal protection under the law.
Let me make a comment, because this seems to be a theme of the press and some others, that we said we were going to do X, Y, and Z. But we didn't say we were going to be magicians. We didn't say we could magically make the Senate change or the House change. We have a very close majority. You see that we're doing exactly what we said we're going to do, successfully. I am one who believes that the filibuster is an undemocratic, utilized in my early generation when I started in an interest in public affairs to undermine the rights of citizens of color in America. I think the filibuster ought to be modified. The founders wanted the Senate to be able to talk and be more thoughtful and sort of, as they said, cool the hot broth into the saucer. But we can't magically make the Republicans be for what the people are for. That was my point. The people are overwhelmingly for the agenda we're passing. And democracy works. And so if the people want those bills to pass, they will either demand that we do away with the filibuster or demand that some Republican senators who refuse to vote for what the people want leave office. But we're going to do everything in our power. I think Chuck Schumer is going to do everything in his power to make sure that the agenda that we are working on and promise the people will in fact be the agenda that we put forward and hopefully pass. None of you here would have predicted 7 Republican votes for conviction. None of us in this room. Yet we got there. So we'll keep talking to our Republican colleagues and keep working with them, both in the House and in the Senate, to get our agenda done, because we believe that is what the people want us to do.
I can't help. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Clement. You go.
Well, I think that all of you know I hail from South Carolina. I've studied history all of my life. My dad made me start studying history when I was 8 years old. I remember Harry Truman and Thomas Dewey. And I've stayed in close touch with history. I remember 1957, I was a high school graduate. I graduated high school in 1957. A lot of people think that Strom Thurmond filibustered the Civil Rights Act. They think about 1964. It was the 1957 Civil Rights Act, which was nothing but a principle. And the filibuster was used to kill that. And we've seen it used throughout time. Now, I'm calling on the American people, but I'm also calling on my friends in the Senate. I think all of you that have been watching things the last several days, you see that our Republican colleagues are now adhering to political philosophies that are a throwback to the 1940s and 50s. And they are using the filibuster to deny progress basically to low-income people. And if they're going to use the filibuster to deny the minimum wage increase, it would be tantamount to using it to deny civil rights. And that, to me, is what we're going to be talking about going forward. We're not going to just give in to these arcade methods of denying progress. This party is not going to do it. And if they want to be categorized that way, we will oblige them. I can tell you, I will not be quiet on this issue. People of color will not be quiet on this issue. We are not going to allow the filibuster that was used to deny me and people who look like me the opportunity to come to this Congress. And that's what they did. And they're not going to deny the opportunity for people to make a decent living above the poverty wage. If that's what they're going to do, they're going to have to live with it, because we're going to make sure that we serve it up.
I couldn't resist coming to the podium when you asked about H.R. 1, because as we gather here on the floor of the House, that legislation is being debated as we speak. And that legislation is called the For the People. bill, H.R. 1. In the Senate, it's S1. So we're very pleased that they have embraced the spirit of that. This is something that is enormously popular among the American people. The American people want to reduce the role of big, dark, special interest money in politics, which is preventing so many good things from happening. The people want to see an end to voter suppression. The first 300 pages of the bill were written by John Lewis to end voter suppression. The people want to see redistricting done by commission so that voters are choosing their elected officials, not their elected officials choosing their voters. The people want to see a stronger voice for people at the grassroots level, small donors and grassroots people in every way, mobilizing money, messaging in every way. The list goes on and on. The people want to see an end to the foreign influence in our elections. That's one of the most popular features of H.R. 1. So as you've heard me say, perhaps you haven't, but others have here, Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. Public sentiment is there. Democrats, Republicans, independents. Just declines to state. People not particularly even engaged in the political arena. But this bill is, when the people say they want this, and this bill is for the people. So it's pretty exciting. You asked this question right when that bill was being debated on the floor of the House. Last night we had a call with Eric Holder and John Sarbanes and Zoe Lofgren and Mondaire Jones, our new member, freshman member, with our grassroots organization around the country. And as we were on that call, the rule on the bill was being debated. People were very excited. They could almost see history in motion. This is essential for us to return the people's house. As Steny began, it was your fourth speech, I think you began, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's pretty exciting. We're going to make it happen, and we're going to make it happen because the public will insist upon it. It's going to make all the difference in the world for the people. I think that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just before we leave, I'm going to say one thing, Madam Speaker. It occurred to me when I went back to my seat. At noon today, I watched the live streaming of the unveiling of a monument across the street from the Capitol in Columbia, South Carolina, from the State House. On this day, March 2nd, 60 years ago, I was arrested on that corner, along with 191 others. 189 of us were found guilty of wanting to sit down at a lunch counter. All I'm saying to you is, nobody thought that day that one of those little 20-year-olds arrested on that day would be standing here today. We are not going to give up on this. We are going to fight to give people a decent salary, get people a decent housing, get people justice. And if the other side want to spend their time wallowing in the past, we're going to do what's necessary to highlight it.
I'll keep it out.
Hello and welcome to the Nomiki Show. I am Nomiki Konst, and today I really need to vent about our president, Joe Biden. Obviously, he was not my first choice for this job of being president, although I acknowledge that his moderate manner, and I say that in the kindest possible way, appealed to many voters traumatized by our last president. But Biden acknowledges that we need to get things done quickly. Quickly. And yet, Jim Hightower always says that there are only two things in the middle of the road: yellow lines and dead armadillos. He's from Texas. Biden proves Hightower might have been wrong. The middle of Biden's moderate road is already strewn with all sorts of carnage. The wreckage of the $15 minimum wage increase, airstrikes on Syria before any consultation with Congress, kids in immigration detention centers again, and a broken promise to give Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, the supplemental Social Security they are immediately eligible for if they move to the mainland. But here's the worst part. All these things are wrong. And what is Biden putting his focus and political capital into? Trying to salvage the nomination of Neera Tanden. I said I needed a vent. This woman doesn't belong in government. I can't stand her stone-hearted neoliberalism, her ruthlessness, her cruelty. But even if I were a neoliberal, strike me down, oh high powers, I'd still oppose her as exactly the kind of corrosive personality we need to get out of politics. Politics isn't beanbag, the street corner philosopher Finley Peter Dune once said a long time ago. Been there, done that. It's not everything goes the way you want it to. But at some point, we have to call out the new president when he's fighting the wrong fights, like right now for Neera Tanden, and the important fights are going the wrong way. Raising the minimum wage is badly overdue, and it belonged in the stimulus because, as I said the other day, raising the minimum wage is stimulus. So Biden couldn't pull it off. You're not going to be able to win every fight, but we will never know if he was right not to hold up the stimulus package to try to win this. He could have tried. He should have tried. What we do know is he needs to get it done now, another way, and quickly. We can already see that it may end up short of the $15, which was already a compromise and a fight for 10 years. We've been fighting for a $15 minimum wage. If we were just adjusting for inflation, the minimum wage should be more like $25 an hour. Adjust for the cost of living in many cities, it should be around $33 an hour. The money isn't a way of keeping political score. This is real money for working people. This is not a political football. I will put one demand in right here. If we can't get to $15 right now, we must index in any increase to inflation so we never, ever, ever hurt poor people this way again, working people this way again, women, immigrants. So that fight for a fair minimum wage isn't over, but we need to hear from President Biden. I'm one of those progressives who needs to know he really is on our side and is ready to fight, not just to the last drop of my own blood, but to the last drop of the Democratic Party's blood. This is about who we are and about who he is. And right now, I am not very sure. He campaigned on all these issues, as did Kamala Harris. And he's just out there blatantly reversing his positioning, thinking no one's noticing, like it's not going to matter. Furthermore, we need to see his strength in leadership. If he's this weak, if he shows this weakness this early on, he's showing not only conservatives how weak he is and that they could steamroll him, but of course our centrists like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin and others. And he's showing progressives. So if he's going to play this week, we have to start flexing up. All right, I vented. We have a great show today. We have Joshua Kahn Russell and Lance from the Serfs. And right after this break, the one and only Ben Dixon is here, host of The Ben Dixon Show, and many other things too. He's going to give us some updates, and we're going to talk about our frustration with Biden. Stick around right after the break. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. It's another month, another book club month. You guys don't know about the book club. We're having fun with it. A lot of fun. We just partnered up with Verso Books, friends of the show, and they're going to be working with us. We have a book schedule we're going to be releasing in the next couple of days, so you can take a look at the lineup for the next few months. If you don't know about the book club, you can we have 3 different types of book clubs: 1 book a month, 2 books a month, or 3 or 4 books a month, which is what I'm doing. It's fun. It's definitely challenging me to use my time a little bit more efficiently, to keep up with the books and the conversations and be ready for the conversations we have with authors when the authors are available, just the conversations around the topics. You can go check that out at patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. Make sure when you sign up to go to the book club options, because unfortunately Patreon doesn't allow us to separate the two. But you can also become a patron. That's how we keep everything rolling. And with a patron membership, you get a mug, which I don't have here, or you could get a bag or a sticker. You know the jam. That's what you do when you sign up at patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. That's Nomiki. All right, we will be back in a couple of seconds with the one and only Benjamin Dixon. All right, welcome back. I'm going to do something a little different right now, because this is a topic that, if you know enough about our show and have watched me prior, I did a lot of reporting on the island of Puerto Rico. And there is something that gets under my skin a lot, but also that's because it gets under people who are from Puerto Rico. They're skinned a lot. Today on Capitol Hill, there was it's happening right now, a coalition has come together for a bill introducing statehood to Congress. Now, let me be very clear, just to break this down. On the island of Puerto Rico, the statehood party is associated, I'm going to go through those names in a second, Dorsey, so you can take that down. The statehood party on the island of Puerto Rico is associated with the far right. They are people who are associated with the statehood party. I'm just going to give you a little scroll. The representative, the resident commissioner, which is like a Congress member, but obviously can't vote. She who's introducing this, she comes from the Trump wing of the party. Keep that in mind. The statehood party is the right wing on the island. And she was a co-chair of the Trump campaign. So her name is Jennifer Gonzalez. Okay, I'm going to just roll through. I saw a really great set of graphics on this on Instagram. Just some background on statehood on the island. Of course, now it's not coming up. The people who are associated with this party are the religious right. They are people who are anti-LGBTQ. They are people who are selling off the island right now to major investors and real estate developers. They're the ones who are pushing for tax benefits so that Puerto Rico becomes the Cayman Islands and it's a tax refuge. They don't want to eliminate the debt. In fact, Jennifer Gonzalez said today that becoming a state would not mean that the debt is eliminated. So let's just keep this in mind as this PR stunt, because that's what it is presented before Congress. Dorsey, can you put the tweet up of the ad that was put out in the New York Times today? Because both Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Nydia Velázquez, both of Puerto Rican descent, have introduced an alternative bill, which is basically to give the island of Puerto Rico the choice to determine, which is probably the more fair way of doing it. All right, so this is the ad. If you're listening to the governor of Puerto Rico, you're not even getting half the story. The governor is a statehooder. So there are a lot of Democrats out there who say, yeah, but like if Puerto Rico became a state, we'd have another Senate member. That's not true at all. The current governor is conservative. The last governor was conservative. The resident commissioner is conservative. There is no guarantee whatsoever. In fact, there's more of a chance that those two senators would be conservative. Do you see what's going on here? Can we click on the actual advertisement so folks can see it? So this is an ad. It's discussing colonialism. Self-Determination Act is the act that is being presented by Representative Ocasio-Cortez and Nydia Velázquez. Can you scroll down a little bit more to the bottom of the ad? Okay, so this is a coalition of different groups. You should go check them out. The island is, because of a Supreme Court ruling, the island, Puerto Ricans on the island, important, do not have the same benefits as they would when they go to the states. And that has nothing to do with being a state or not. That has to do with a Supreme Court ruling that is essentially white supremacist. And it's based on an opinion rooted in white supremacy. So we're going to talk about this more, hopefully tomorrow on the show. But I wanted to give you a quick update and just my gentle reminder that statehood is the far right. Statehood is the far right. And there are many different opinions on the island. Everything is rooted in status. But keep that in mind when you see people saying, Democrats saying, well-meaning liberals saying that Puerto Rico should be a state. It's not up to us to decide, I believe. I believe that the people of the island should be able to determine on their own. And they've had these votes, but they're not overwhelming and they're often complicated and they're never acknowledged on the island. All right, Ben Dixon's here. What's up, Ben? Where is he? Our dear friend, Ben Dixon. There he is. Welcome to the Nomiki Show, Ben Dixon, with your beautiful microphone and camera. You're so fancy, all dressed up. There he is. Wait, the audio is not connected yet. That's a Zoom thing. That's not you. That's just Zoom doing the thing. Ben Dixon is, of course, the host of the Benjamin Dixon Show. And you have new shows, too. Want to give people updates if they don't know?
It is Like It or Not with Benjamin Dixon, Rebecca Zor, and DJ exclusive every morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for having me, Nomi.
Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
So we got a lot to talk about here. How are you feeling about the Biden administration right now?
I'm feeling like they're making it entirely too easy to oppose them. Besides a couple of things that he spoke out about the unions and not what's happening in Alabama specifically, but generally speaking, that was cool. All right. But everything else, I'm like, it's pretty much a wash. They're fighting harder for near attendance than they are 15 an hour. So, and there's still actually in the background noise about Rahm Emanuel. So, if he's going to continuously make these kind of steps and then not fight on behalf of 15 an hour, not give the people $2,000, but he's going to reduce it for by $600, and then we still haven't gotten that, then that's a major problem, and they're going to make it extremely easy for Republicans and Donald Trump to come right back in 2022 and 2024.
I mean, we were talking about this earlier today on the Majority Report. The margin of win was smaller than that of between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And it wasn't because of sexism. It's because I believe, this country is a little bit more conservative than we want to acknowledge. I'm not saying that it is totally conservative. I think it's a bit more conservative than maybe we all feel. And a lot of that, I believe, has to do with the fact that the Democratic Party is just basically non-existent.
Right.
Sure, we can get $15 minimum wage passed in Florida, and that's great when you lead with certain issues. But especially in states where the work has been done. I mean, there was a lot of energy, and say what you will about Florida, there is organizing there.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of parts of the country where there hasn't been. And the Democratic Party just puts somebody up who's, like an Amy McGrath who's going to be running again. And as a result, they're able to swoop in. So the margin was 42,000 votes between Trump and Biden in swing states. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because I feel like they're just coasting.
Yeah.
And coasting, you don't coast when you barely won.
Right. No, exactly. Right. I think so. They feel like they can come in and coast, much like that video of Pete Buttigieg riding his bike into work, as if that's the type of thing that people are looking for now. They're mistaking this for 2008, when a lot of us were fooled by the symbolism. You have Kamala Harris getting down hard to work with papers in front of her hands, and the heels were on. I mean, she was dressed to the hilt, like she was looking fly as all get out. That don't matter. It does not matter at all. The people don't want Instagram leaders. The people need everything that we voted for. We voted for $2,000 per American, right? We voted for $15 an hour. They ran on that. They said they were going to do it, and now they're abandoning it in exchange for near tendon. And I'm really like, I wonder how it works in their brains. Because are they not paying attention? I think they're satisfied with the spoils of their victory, and they're so enamored by the fact that they're now moving into Washington, D.C., and they're taking all of these important positions, and they're getting all these new notorieties. They're secretary of this and undersecretary of that. But they're missing a really important point. The American people don't care about that. The American people sent them there to do stuff for us materially.
But isn't this just sort of the dynamic that's existed for the last, since neoliberalism took over the Democratic Party, that the Republicans ginormously F up, Democrats get elected, they coast on imagery, they coast on charm, and then it paves the way for the next Republican to come in and do more damage.
Exactly. Yeah, no, they have not learned. They're still running the 1992 playbook. Right. Mm-hmm. They're running the 1992 playbook, both in terms of their political strategy, but also implementation. Joe Biden honestly believes that there's a way that he can work with Republicans as if they're going to have some type of epiphany. And Republicans are just sitting back, salivating, laughing at the fact that they're going to steamroll over him every single chance that they get. And because Democrats won't even make this a referendum on Republicans not wanting to help the people, because they're demonstrating themselves that they don't want to help the people, it's going to make it that much easier for Republicans to catalyze their faux populism, and actually, quite honestly, their nationalized populism in order to get power again. So all the Republicans are going to have to do is say, look, the Democrats didn't take care of you, and we will. Case closed. 2022 is a wrap.
No, that's exactly it. And that's basically what Biden wants anyway, whether or not Biden stays in office or doesn't. I mean, if he keeps the presidency by some miracle, I never thought that he wanted to win the Senate in Georgia. And you're in Georgia. I mean, Did you feel, there was organizing happening from Georgians in the state, but did you feel that the Biden administration or the campaign was fully invested in Georgia? What was the dynamic there?
I don't know if that was a product of, I know exactly what you're saying. And because in terms of like advertising, if you just look at advertising alone, you would see an occasional Joe Biden ad. And again, occasional is all relative. You saw a lot of Joe Biden ads, but the area was completely saturated with every other organization that was organizing on the ground, every other political action committee. The people that are on the ground were not associated with the Biden administration or their victory team or any of that. It was all local organizing. I would say it was like 99-1. So I don't know if that was a result of them not being interested, but I do see what was the purpose of us winning those 2 seats, right? It almost would have been better for Joe Biden to not have won those seats, because then they would not have been held accountable. But now we gave them those seats, and now they're still not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately, yeah, like they're more interested in negotiating with Lisa Murkowski or setting her up to pretend that they're negotiating with her, rather than, bending the will of your own Democrats. I mean, there's so much. It's like they're looking for the excuse, and the excuse is Joe Manchin, but you're the effing president.
Right.
And you can get on the phone, and you have to show your leadership, show your power. Lyndon Johnson, you're also a creature of a Senate. Where is the Lyndon Johnson in you? Why aren't you demanding people come into the White House and talk to them off of your toilet? Like, literally, where is that?
No, I mean,
Johnson reference, folks.
No, honestly, it's they couldn't be more transparent. Right. In short order, they came in and did the exact opposite of everything that they said that they were going to do. So I think to that end, that he has no incentive or no desire. Joe Biden has no desire to actually get in Joe Manchin's face and demand that he votes for the people like Lyndon Johnson does in that picture. Right. But, for him, it's like, the parliamentarian. Throw my hands up. They can't do anything. So, of course, he's not going to say anything to Joe Manchin, because he won't even say anything to an unelected official.
That's right. Okay, so this is all happening. There's an opportunity for the left to really push back and highlight, because, even reporters are basically seeing this dynamic and saying, why are you spending so much energy on Neera Tanden and not on the $15 minimum wage? That's from like NBC reporters. So there's an opportunity. There's this space open now to like really throw it in Biden's face. And if not Biden, Harris, who probably wants to have, a future where she could be elected president, right?
Right.
There's real leverage here if we can get our act together. But simultaneously, the left right now is like without a big major leader. You're a host as well. Like, we know how hard it is on these platforms now that are very much inclined to supporting the right wing. Our numbers are like nothing compared to Ben Shapiro's or any of these places. So, the solidarity on the left right now, like, I think a lot of people feel frustrated. What's your take? Like, how do we make sure to line up against Biden? What can we do?
I honestly, the left is in no position to do so, except for our own individual efforts, and then some of us can collectively get together and do so. But the left is really good at fracturing itself at the most critical time that we need to be organized, and I think that's on purpose. But I digress. I think in terms of what we do, it really should. It has to be just. It's going to be an entrenched fight. And it's going to be one that not a lot of the people who are making the most noise right now, they're not equipped for this fight. They're not going to be here in 4 years when we're still fighting, because it was all about a glorious moment that they thought that they can do everything in one, fell swoop at the beginning of Nancy Pelosi's second speakership. And so to that end, I think we really have to just dig in our heels and do a couple of things. Primary the hell out of everybody. Everybody, like, mercilessly. I don't care if they are your parents' favorite politician, or if they've been in office and they changed your diaper I don't care who they are. We've got to primary them, and we've got to show them that there is organizing power in terms of the left, even if the left isn't organized. There are enough organizations that have resources and pull and impact that we can actually mount some serious primary challenges. And I think that's where we should put all of our energy in terms of applying pressure to Joe Biden. They're on a suicide run, if you ask me, because if they cannot clearly see that they're getting ready to run into a brick wall of 2022 and 2024, there's literally nothing that we can do to stop them from doing that. We can shout, we can talk about it, we can cover it, which we should, but at the same time, we need to prepare to take them down just as much as Republicans are preparing to take them down.
What's Bernie's role in all this right now?
I mean, he's Bernie, and with everything he's doing, Bernie's one of those dudes. He's gonna fight to the end. Bernie is going to be in another 20 years or however 130. He's going to be on his bed with all his great grandchildren, and he's going to still be saying "F around and find out," right? Because that's just Bernie all the way to the end. What's disappointing about this moment in terms of the organization of the left is that there's a lot of people on the left who are more interested in declaring that some of these leaders are not our leaders, right? Or they're not progressive enough. And here Bernie Sanders is to the end fighting on behalf of the people. I'm sorry, if that's not progressive enough for some people, then maybe they need to check their progressivism. You know, they're like Nina Turner. Now she's not progressive enough for people. And I'm like, these are individuals who actually have laid everything on the line for these very specific fights, right? They don't get Bernie Sanders ran for president, but he's not a superstar in terms of like the glamour and the Bernie is out there doing the work, but it's just disappointing that sometimes the people who are working the hardest are oftentimes lambasted the most by people who claim to love them.
Well, yeah, it's you know, you got to direct your energy at the right people. If you're not directing your energy right now at Biden and to pressure him, and you know, I don't. That's what solidarity is, right? This is the whole point in solidarity. This is the conversation that I wanted to have with you is, you know, how do we collectively enhance our solidarity and make sure that we're not becoming vehicles of the right wing? Because this is ultimately what happens is, you know, when you're more busy, forget about calling up the Democrats. That needs to happen. They're in power. But when you're calling out the left for tone, I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know what they're calling it.
They're who do you really want to have this?
Yes, please. I do.
I don't know if I'm trying to think, do I really want to have this conversation?
Okay, sorry.
No, yeah. No,
we can talk about
I'm
Dr.
speaking
Seuss
to all of
if you
us.
want.
We're talking
Dr.
about all
Seuss?
of us here because I think it's intentional. Look at the moment that we're in right now. The moment when there should be, if not a unified left voice, a mildly unified left voice or a moderately unified left voice, but instead it's fractured into 1,000 different pieces, and to the point where you have people now who look at there are people on Twitter who are calling Nina Turner a conservative. Right. This is the kind of derangement that we're dealing with right now in terms of the divisiveness of the left. And I think that's on purpose. I think that there has been a tremendous power play to neutralize the left. And it worked. You know why? Because the left wasn't that strong to begin with.
Right.
And if you think about it, like it takes a concerted effort, a lot of energy and resources to consistently destroy the one conduit in this country that is consistently fighting on behalf of the people. And every generation, here we go, you know, they're taking it down. First, they take out the leaders, right?
Yep.
They, you know, what the left is going through now is nothing compared to the 60s when they just literally would kill them.
They actually killed them. Yes.
Right. And then it was just like a period of nothingness. When born in 1980, there was no, solidified, unified national left. You had to go and find it. You had to seek it out. And as soon as it started emerging again, what happened? Just fractured into 1,000 pieces.
Yeah, the hit pieces came out, they were smearing folks, rumors go around, folks left the Bernie campaign to go work for Biden. And there's a lot of this stuff. And then it's interesting because I've been thinking about this too, thinking, okay, well, why didn't this stuff happen during the rise of Bernie? And ultimately, I think some of this fracturing, as you said, is well-funded, we were all good. They had no problem with us when we were challenging Biden or Hillary Clinton. Yeah. But the second Biden wins, he doesn't need the progressives to fall in line with him because whatever conservatives are out there who are trying to crack at Biden, they know that the way to do that is to make sure that the left is not unifying to make Joe Biden more progressive. And that's the thing that I think folks need to keep in mind. When we're fractured now, it prevents us from pressuring Biden in a way in which we might actually have there's a possibility, there's a path towards maybe.
And here, I want you to watch this other thing that happened, right? So in this process of fracturing, there's a portion of the so-called left at this juncture that is closer to aligning with the alt-right than ever before. Right. It was a concerted effort year after year after year. I think we saw it it was almost every spring. Every spring, someone would come out with a major push and enough impact and influence or resources to make it a national conversation as to whether or not the left should align with the right. All right. And now at the moment that we need a unified left to terrify the hell out of Joe Biden, now they're closer. Some of our leftist comrades are closer to aligning with the Proud Boys.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That's just the timing is too perfect for it to be coincidental.
And their audiences have grown with a lot of conservative members. I mean, it's very concerning. We have to have our eyes open. I mean, it's one thing to be able to be in the Senate or in Congress and co-sign on a bill with a Republican over one issue. It's another thing to move your audience towards the far right, fascism. I mean, that's what it is. That is the rise of fascism. That is how fascism always rises. There aren't enough Proud Boys out there. They have to expand their audience and they need to bring it in. And the conservative movement has been facing an existential crisis for years, so much that they publish reports on it, and that they knew the country was getting more diverse, younger, more open-minded. Some of these culture issues that they used to fight for didn't work anymore. So they had to find new flavors. And now it's cancel culture and, they're censoring me. And it's like, it's just all sorts of neo-fascism that, but how much of that is because the Republican Party didn't have their act together? Like the institutional Republican Party, the Bush types.
The institutional Republicans, they really thought that they could control that Rush Limbaugh side of the party because they did for so long until it was insufficient, right? The dog whistles were insufficient. And then the bullhorn almost became insufficient. And so now it became like live action role playing in terms of like storming the Capitol, and it's completely out of their control. So the institutional part of the Republican Party, they are all but out of power except to the extent to which they can continuously align with Donald Trump. And this is why Mitch McConnell made it clear that he's willing to support Donald Trump in 2024 if he becomes the nominee. This is why Mitt Romney capitulated and just kind of acquiesced to the reality that Donald Trump could win again. It's because the institutional part of the Republican Party is on its way out, and the only thing that's going to be left is going to be this rabidly racist and fascistic arm that is worshiping literally with a golden calf Donald Trump.
It's funny you say that because right now Congress they're doing hearings on the events of January 6th and how it played out. And Tom Cotton,
that guy,
decides, let's put it, I think we have a tweet up there. Tom Cotton is not talking about the white supremacists. He's not talking about the extremism. He's suddenly talking about MS-13 at a hearing on the Capitol riots. Like, look over there. Oh, we have this other issue with these immigrants in Long Island and, attacking like white people in Long Island. Remember when Donald Trump was obsessed with MS-13 and would go and do these rallies in Long Island, which, had impact. A lot of Democrats lost seats in Long Island and in the New York State Senate and other, potential congressional seats as well.
Yeah.
But that's an example. Tom Cotton, they can't even, the inability to deal with something so extraordinary as the Capitol Hill protest, to see the reality of it. Simultaneously, you have the Biden administration in their inability to see the reality of this pandemic, the reality of this economy, the reality of this digital space, which is facilitating this stuff out of, I feel like we have a government that's not, their feet, they're not on the ground and they're not tethered to reality.
Right. Because they don't feel like they actually have to be. See, there's a part of me that understands what this really is. And I tried not to engage in it because it's infuriating to the point of rage, right? They know that at the end of the day, they can call out their hounds and crush any rebellion, any revolution, any protest against them. And I think it's because of that, they carry themselves so cavalierly. Some of the stuff that they actually say and try to get away with, I would be terrified of saying to the American people when you have 45 million people who lost their jobs because of COVID-19. You have millions of people standing in bread lines. You have hundreds of thousands of people who are unable to pay. Millions of people who are unable to pay their rent. Right. And so there's a certain level of disregard and disdain that they have. And I think it's because they have the arrogance of the militarized police state in this country. And they know that if things ever really got out of hand, all right, if people really which we do, but if people really started acting on it, which during the summer we started to, and we saw how they crushed it, right? We saw they crushed it with the police state in every single city. They came down like a hammer. And so to a certain extent, the people I think we, the people, have to understand that this government has completely abdicated its responsibility and they are no longer engaging in a social contract with us. And to a certain extent, we've got to be innovative and find ways of taking care of ourselves because they clearly do not care.
Ben Dixon, I feel like this is our Bolshevik moment. I'm like,
Workers of the world. You know,
Exactly.
listen. It's, I mean, they can only tell us so many times.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think that the social contract comment is spot on. They've completely violated, and I mean, this is outrageous right now what's
Yeah.
happening. Like watching these hearings, and they're not accepting reality. We're living in a conspiratorial government at this point on both sides.
Yeah.
Ben Dixon, I love you. I wish we had more time. Come back
We
on
do
soon.
tomorrow. Right?
Tomorrow. Oh, right,
Tomorrow
that's
morning.
tomorrow, isn't it? Tomorrow morning,
Yes,
bright and
so
early.
we'll pick it up right back up tomorrow morning. Thanks so much
Fantastic.
thanks for
Where
having me.
can we find your show tomorrow morning?
Right here on YouTube, the Benjamin Dixon Show channel, Twitch, everywhere something streams, we're streaming.
Fantastic. All right. See you tomorrow.
care, Nomiki.
Bright
See
and
you
early.
tomorrow.
I'll have coffee.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks. All right, we'll be right back after this break with Joshua Kahn Russell and Lance from the Serfs to talk about all the news today. Ooh.
Now is
Hello, welcome back to the Nomiki Show. Our dear friend Joshua Kahn Russell is here. He is the executive director of the Wildfire Project and freshly shaven. Look at that.
Yeah, it's almost springtime.
It is almost springtime and pandemic 1 year anniversary, which now I'm going to think of every time spring hits.
Yeah, wow. Wow. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So I've been kind of in this like haze of our country is way more conservative than we are really registering, based on a lot of, things that are happening, not just the fact that like gerrymandering exists and things are being eliminated and that the vote count difference between Biden and Trump was actually worse than people imagine, and that it's just going to potentially pave the way for Republicans taking control in 2022 and possibly 2024. The Supreme Court, not to mention that, and also just like the rise of the far right being so young, a lot of it coming from like young people. And I bring this up because Ari Berman, who is if you don't know Ari Berman, he is always discussing, voter registration and gerrymandering and voting laws across the country. So let's play this clip from Ari Berman.
I think why now is because we are seeing the weaponization of Trump's big lie all around the country. Republicans are pointing to the fact that so many of their voters believe the election was stolen as a reason to cut back on voting. So for 2 months, Trump said the election was stolen. And afterwards, now we are seeing Republicans in state after state, including all of these key swing states like Georgia and Arizona, rush to restrict access to the ballot. They are not just targeting mail voting, which is what Trump has largely decried. They are also targeting early voting and other methods that are perceived to benefit Democrats. And so this is really the biggest assault on voting rights we've seen in decades. The numbers are stunning. 250 restrictions on voting introduced in 43 states in just 2 months. And it's a direct result of what President Trump and now former President Trump has done.
Let's just
think.
So, he's talking about Arizona. There's an argument going before the Supreme Court over Arizona's had early voting for a long time. It's something that they're used to handling. That's why the mail-in voting was not attacked in Arizona the way it was in other states, because conservatives use early voting and so do liberals in Arizona. But this idea of the big lie, it's like haunting me, because I feel like as progressives, we as a movement are consumed, as we should be, with fights that are right in front of us, the crises. And there are mounting crises, tons of crises. But it's like drinking from a fire hose, or whatever, metaphor you want to put out there. Until we address the big issue, which is the big lie, the big lie is what created the riots on Capitol Hill. That was, the big lie is perpetuated on these platforms that we live on. And, shocker, our numbers are nowhere near what some of these like far right-wing extremists who live big lies. The big lie has permeated every single aspect of our culture, even to the point where Joe Biden's unresponsiveness and his ability to work with Republicans shows that he's acquiescing to the big lie. I mean, Joshua, I normally have a lot of hope for the future, and that our generation and younger are much more progressive and forward thinking, but they're really outmaneuvering us right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And as reality gets more and more ridiculous, it's a lot easier to lie about it, right? And I think this is the mistake. I mean, there's a lot of mistakes, but one of the main mistakes that people who call for moderation, or that centrists in general make, is the idea that people are looking for some sort of calm response to a crazy world. And they're like, no, people are looking for a dramatic response to a crazy world. Mm-hmm. And the cycle that Ari Berman's talking about is amazing, right? So you lie to your base and you say, you tell Republicans that the election was stolen, and then they go and cite that as justification for all their behavior. Oh my God, 70% of Republicans believe this, so therefore we have to take it seriously. It's like, they believe it because of your propaganda. And so that's how the cycle goes. And I do think it's incumbent upon social movements then to be meeting the crazy out there, because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about how all the systems that support life on this planet are in free fall or collapse with climate change. That's putting pressure on our economic, political, and social systems. And so as things get more and more destabilized, the ground is more and more fertile for people. Of course, why wouldn't you believe some conspiracy theory? It doesn't seem less feasible than the real explanation of why things are how they are. And so I think we need to. So I'll give one example of what I mean, which is we talked before about the Keystone XL campaign. And so that this was a campaign against a multi-billion-dollar oil company that lasted for 10 years that I was a part of. And the movement wisdom at the time was that you build an escalating ladder of engagement, right? And we, instead of trying to get people involved by first clicking on a petition, and then maybe if you sign the petition, then maybe you'll go to a meeting, and then maybe if you go to the meeting, then maybe you'll facilitate the meeting, and up and up and up. We invited people to come participate in a dramatic civil disobedience action as their first ever action, come risk arrest at the White House to fight this pipeline. And The reason that it was so successful is because so many people had been hearing for so long, climate change is terrible. So take shorter showers, right? The prescription for the problem did not match the scale of the problem. Yeah, exactly.
Ban
So
plastic
we
straws.
offered people a prescription that matched the scale of the crisis. And I think that's why so many people who are believing the big lie is they're being offered a narrative that matches the deprivation they're feeling in real life. And unless the left does that as well, it's going to, I think the big lie is going to be more compelling.
That's interesting. I mean, I was on my Instagram last night, and I was baffled by someone I know who's very successful, educated, posting an entire rant about how at this stage in the pandemic, right? An entire rant. Oh, they're in Europe too, which you'd think like, about how the pandemic wasn't real and it was a way to force us to stay home and not be working with each other and to control us. And I know that this was rooted in like some conspiracy theories that are being propagated online. I just know it based on her recent posts. I know we all have examples of that. Like we know people like this who've bought into these conspiracies, but I think it was so shocking to me was just how somebody who was living in truth, or at least I thought so, a reality, I guess is the better way of saying it, was so easy. Like they flipped her so quickly, like 2 years ago to now. And it freaks the hell out of me because what's next? Who's next? How do you?
Right. Well, and you were talking earlier with Ben about, you know, the whatever you want to call it, the dumb left, etc. Like this is why being part of real organizations matters, right? Which is that if you are part of a social movement, meaning you're part of an organization that offers you a lens with which to interpret the world around you, right? That's the value of ideology when your ideology is grounded in real life practice. So you're constantly adapting and evolving to your circumstances, but you're rooted in a basic lens through which you can interpret the world around you. So as the world around us is more and more on fire, as the old order that we grew up in and the things that a lot of our generation took for granted are more and more upended, what do you have to anchor your sense of how you make meaning of what's going on? And if you're not part of real life organizations and if you're not part of social movements, then you're going to blow in the wind with whatever explanation makes sense in the moment based on whatever social milieu you're a part of online. And so it means that I think a lot of the audience, the kind of newly politicized in the last, let's say 6 years, left-wing online audience is super malleable and super susceptible to being pulled in some of these conspiratorial directions because you're not rooted at anything. And that's the value that being part of an organization can offer you is rooting.
It's also the value of having doing the best to politically educate yourself and understand, what your philosophies are and what the history reflects. Lance from the Serfs, hey there. Thanks for joining us. Is he all set up? Can you hear us? I think we're having some audio issues. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up while that's for our next clip. I had to do this just because Joy Reid drives me crazy. So we have a clip of Joy Reid. She's asking Representative Pramila Jayapal why Democrats always seem to be in an abusive relationship with Republicans. I think it's on topic. She drives me crazy. Let's play that clip.
Can you explain to just our viewers who are on the progressive side and young viewers, I get asked by this even by my own kids, why don't Democrats do that? Why do Democrats always seem to, it's almost sort of like they're sort of in an abusive relationship where they think if they just cook a better meal, they won't get licks. Can you explain why Democrats refuse to do the things that Republicans would do if they were in y'all's position?
Well, I can just say that I think there is some, sort of past notion of a Senate where you could have good policy discussions and good people on both sides would come together. But let's not forget that the vast majority of these senators refused to vote to convict Donald Trump. The vast majority of them did not say anything in the months leading up to January 6th. The vast majority have not been willing to do things that are incredibly popular in their own districts. And so I don't think that there's suddenly going to be some, kumbaya moment where they're going to drink different coffee and suddenly decide they want to get on the same page about delivering for working people. And that's what I think is so essential, because Joy, we've got to deliver. We can't go back to voters in 2 years and say, I'm sorry, a parliamentarian who is doing her job, but she's unelected, not like the rest of us who are elected to these positions, deliver promises to voters. We can't go back to voters and say, I'm sorry, we couldn't do it because the parliamentarian ruled we couldn't do it. That's just not going to fly for 27 million people who are struggling to put food on the table and earn a decent wage.
I mean, okay, great point by Representative Jayapal. Interesting that Joy Reid is now recognizing the power of the progressive movement when she supported candidates who did not support the $15 minimum wage and fought with us tooth and nail. The way that she hates now, they're playing with Republicans. Shocker. Lance from the Serfs, welcome. What's your take on this little dynamic here? We were just talking about how the movement, we're facing a lot of obstacles that were possibly unforeseen in the growth of the right at a pace that we're not organizing necessarily at the same pace, I guess is the way of saying it. What's your take on how Joy Reid's taking this?
Can you hear me first off? I just want to
we can hear you. We're good.
Audio. Oh, awesome. Okay, well, this is fantastic. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on the show again. Always a pleasure to be here. I'll say this, I guess, because you bring me on as the kind of exotic foreign correspondent from Canada to talk about the differences and juxtapose it between the two countries. It's never going to stop shocking me how every single time I watch what is going on in the United States when it comes to the rules and decorum, the Republicans are fine with doing things that most people would consider egregious. Like they figure out the demographics aren't going to help them win elections. So let's just gerrymander districts. Let's do voter suppression of the black population, stuff like that. Whatever it takes to win, basically. It's cutthroat, it's ruthless, and I mean, it's racist as well. But like just calling a spade, they don't really care about decorum as much, where it seems like something that'll genuinely benefit millions of Americans and lift many of them out of poverty, like the $15 minimum wage. Suddenly, we're concerned about the parliamentary system, right? Well, not literally the parliamentary system, but you understand what I mean. The act of like, can we not do something else to push this through? In 2022, the Democrats are going to get smoked, like absolutely destroyed. We're going to see a repeat of what had happened during like the first midterms after Obama. What they need to do is things that are genuinely going to help Americans, even Americans who hate them, right? Americans who live in like, either the Rust Belt or parts of America where the idea of a $15 minimum wage would genuinely change lives. Those are the things they need to be fighting for at this moment in time.
Joshua, we're getting smoked.
Of course. I mean, that you actually said this on the Majority Report earlier of how much it embodies weakness. It's just like, that's all it looks like. What the American people love is excuses, process excuses, right? It's beyond.
What's that old line like, want to kill something, send it to a committee?
Saying that, they're not even saying this is hard. They're not saying this is too hard to do. They're just saying we respect abstract norms, so we're not even going to try to do it. The way that telegraphs weakness, both to us and to their base and to their opposition, I'm not sure who they're trying to communicate with here. And on the $15 an hour minimum wage specifically, it's important to understand where capital is on this and where they're lining up, because like a lot of capital gets that a $15 minimum wage is going to happen at some point, and many of them either are doing it on their own for PR or because of grassroots activist pressure campaigns like the one against McDonald's right now, which go to fightfor15.org if you want to support that campaign. The Amazon victory, Costco raised their minimum wage to $16 an hour, for example. And so the real question is, why is the Democratic leadership still living in the past on this? Maybe there's some donor pressure behind the scenes, but that's not really where the balance of forces even seems to be on this. And that's what's amazing to me. Like if Capitol were staunchly against this right now, it would be very obvious why they're trying to do this. But they're not. That's not even the case.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. I mean, the $2,000 checks, like we can afford, I mean, we have to do it. It's actually a protection for our economy. This isn't like just the fact that individuals need the money. It actually strengthens, if you're going to look at it through the lens of the economy being stronger, it strengthens the economy. We're a consumer-based economy. Like, I don't understand it either. It's like when Amazon, their investors started, and we should never look at things through the lens of this, but this is important and it signals a lot that investors are, calling out Amazon for the union busting. So does it just come down to what we all, is this an oligarchy? Like, are we just sitting, is it 5 men in a room? I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but like, is it like 5 company leaders that have a lot of sway with the Biden administration that are deeply invested in keeping, this isn't even the status quo, this is beyond. I mean, status quo is putting a Band-Aid on it. They're not giving a Band-Aid out. Like, the heart is like falling out of the body and they're like, oh, look over there, splash some water on it.
Yeah, I mean, $15 really is the compromise. And contrast how the Democrats seem right now with what is coming from social movements. Actually, so can I read, there was a statement in response from a McDonald's worker who's a grassroots union leader on behalf of the Fight for 15 campaign. Her name is Maribel Cornejo, and she just came out with a statement in response. Can I read it? So I'm just going to read a part of it, but she wrote, "We will not be deterred by an archaic Senate process that throughout history has been used to delay or deny progress for Black and Brown communities while allowing multi-trillion-dollar tax cuts for corporations. We know that increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour would give 32 million workers a raise, save taxpayers billions of dollars of spending on public assistance programs, give workers more money, and put back into local businesses and revitalize the economy. Over the last 8 years, workers with the Fight for 15 and the union have marched in the streets, gone on strike, and put our lives on the line during a pandemic to win a $15 an hour minimum wage. We've already won $70 billion in raises for more than 27 million workers. We've elected a president and vice president who proudly say they support $15. We've transformed how people talk about wages in this country. We've done our job on behalf of the tens of millions of people across the country who desperately need a raise. Now it's time for our elected leaders to do the same." And so I think it's just really important whenever we talk about the failure of national level politicians to talk about how vibrant social movements are on the ground and how much that they're winning and actually creating, we need to translate those gains not into a company by company set of wins or a state by state set of wins, but into national policy. But the pressure from the ground is shifting the balance of forces, even if the Democrats are so far behind the curve. I can't even diagnose why.
This is Revolution Podcast says, this is interesting because you see people like Jamie Dimon talking about a $15 minimum wage. It's mind-boggling to me. I mean, Lance, and I think you're having a little bit of your sound is having some issues. If you can check the chat, Lance, when you get a chance. There's a little bit of a sound, I think maybe the Bluetooth, so maybe if we can adjust it, but let's try. I mean, it's what, I don't really remember. I'm struggling with this because I'm thinking about past administrations, past Democratic administrations, and granted, it's not even 100 days yet, but they're signaling a lot. I don't recall any other Democratic administration, including the Clinton administration, being so out of touch with the most immediate needs of the people, especially in a moment like this. And I'm personally worried. I mean, they're obviously out of touch, and there's been a lot of trickery, but we're spiraling into a depression. I mean, I read a statistic that last month, no small businesses in New York City paid their rent. Sit on that for a second.
Outrageous.
That's outrageous. So we don't even have a good sense of where we are yet, because we're so busy dealing with the pandemic and just trying to get basic checks. But once the evictions start happening, I don't think we're going to have a visible, but why? Like, I mean, is this in Canada? Do you have any sort of, is Trudeau that out of touch? I mean, I'm serious. You have safety nets in place, but like, is this a uniquely American form of like
you're saying the disconnect, I guess, between the government itself and the needs of the people, perhaps is that the question?
Beyond that, I'm saying it's like a delusional, not understanding like the country's about to like fall into the ocean.
Yeah, well, okay. I think we shouldn't take for granted the power that both Reagan and the post-Reagan presidents and administrations, including Bill Clinton, had in terms of pushing this idea of vilifying unions in America and effectively crushing them. And the idea now is that we're seeing a resurgence, thankfully, in large part due to a grassroots, progressive as well as left-wing campaign in the United States and in Canada, worldwide, which is very, very good to see. But that idea that unions aren't actually your enemy, that paying dues isn't just a way for these fat cat union bosses to take what little money you get and then destroy your livelihood, that turns out to be false. We're seeing a resurgence of that, but that is very recent, and that is very important that this is happening. This is one of the reasons why people like Bezos is trying to stifle the Amazon unionization efforts that are going on, because it will be a domino effect. Once people get more worker rights, once they get better conditions, once they get paid sick leave, once they get maternity leave, like, oh my word, once they get these kind of things, it's a Pandora's box. They're not going to want to give that up. They're going to be like, this is just a better quality of life. It's the same thing. Bernie Sanders' messaging worked really well, because all of a sudden the idea of something that they take for granted in Nordic countries, everyone else was like, wait, what? That's a thing? You can do that? But like, women get paid maternity leave, fathers get paternity leave. These things are real. Like, all of a sudden, it's a brave new world. Wow. That being said, I think it's been so reinforced and indoctrinated both into American culture, and it's been done by whether it's Democrats or Republicans, like I said, since kind of the Thatcher Reagan era, that we should vilify the idea of unions. So while there is a huge disconnect between those two sentiments, there are still some glimmers of hope that I don't want to throw out. For example, the other day when Joe Biden came forward and spoke in as strong a terms, I guess, as he could in favor of the union Amazon efforts, saying that he didn't say that I agree with you, which would have been fantastic, but it was more just that, like, no worker has the right to quash unions. Your voices need to be heard, right? People shouldn't take for granted what little moments like that actually do in terms of like maybe changing the public discourse. That being said, the $15 minimum wage, why are they fighting back and forth? I don't know how far this goes in terms of their genuine belief, but there's this idea that small businesses, if the minimum wage is raised in the United States to $15 an hour, they will collapse, and they are they're the bedrock of America. Whereas the truth of the matter, if they were being intellectually honest about it, is that America is really more like a bunch of small countries, independent countries. All these states are very, very different from one another, and what is good in one state, which is the $15 minimum wage, doesn't apply to another state. Very expensive states, say like California, they can have much and afford much higher minimum wages than $15 an hour, right? It's because right now we're trying to apply a blanket rule, because if we don't do this, then there's effectively nothing.
I mean, frankly, if nobody can support themselves off a $15 minimum wage in America. Yep. Prior to the pandemic, there were plenty of reports that talked about living in a one-bedroom apartment. You can't survive off $15 an hour. Final word, Joshua.
Oh, I just want to say Lance, when you were mentioning Joe Biden's statement, the first thing that went off in my brain, the like organizer brain, is like the campaign's going to be cutting an ad with this, right? The campaign's going to be using this statement as an organizing tool to convince people that it's not so scary to join a union. And so there's I know a lot of people who are not organizers who reacted to that critically, saying, he didn't mention Amazon specifically. He didn't mention Bessemer specifically, which is true. I wish he did. Of course, I wish he did. And what that creates for smart organizers is a bunch of tools that you can then use and apply in a fraught campaign. And so those are the moments when we can pressure politicians to make statements like that we can use that to our advantage. To
give it legs, as they say in the biz. Joshua Kahn Russell, Lance from the Serfs, we love you. You're the best. Thanks for joining us today. We will be back tomorrow. Hey guys, wait, I didn't do my little thing. Make sure to smash the like button, subscribe, check out the Serfs TV over on Twitch, right? Where else? Anywhere else? Nope. you will find. We'll put it in the comment section. Thank you to everybody that is in the chat right now on Twitch at twitch.com/the_Nomiki_TV or show. I can't even do it right. Oh my God. We'll put the link up there for everybody on YouTube. But thanks to everybody on YouTube. Make sure to smash that like button, click subscribe.
We get a
and
shout
join us
out
on
for
Patreon.
wildfireproject.org too.
Yes, of course.
Check it
Right up there.
out.
Check it out.
Wildfireproject.org.
Wildfireproject.org. And just to shake it up more, Matriarch is planning there's going to be a late spring training, very exciting. So go sign up at matriarchpack.com. We are crowdsourcing for this training. So if you can throw in some extra bucks, it is really hard to fundraise right now. They've banned political ads. It's been very hard for a lot of organizations out there. So, whatever you can give, it'll go a long way. These trainings are a big deal. We're transforming the way working women in particular, run for office, and excited to hopefully recruit, another, maybe dozen strong women to go into the House and help out, our strong progressives there. All right. Pete from Oakland says, oh, thank you. Sends her love. Loving today's lineup, Nomiki. Just got my copy of Naomi Klein's new book yesterday. Thank you for introducing wonderful folks to us. PR Statehood Party was connected to Tom Perez, right, Nomiki? Yes, they cut a deal. We'll talk about that tomorrow if we end up. I think we're going to make that a topic on tomorrow's show. Kowalski from Nebraska says, so my state GOP meeting was bad. Oof. Never Trumpers exist, but don't speak up. The party leaders openly fired up the crowd with lies like the steal, almost got punched by calling out anti-Semitic remarks. Wow. The state of the GOP in this country today. Ian Kinzel says, thanks to the big lie, I now know that COVID is a conspiracy to control me by keeping me from work, but work doesn't control me at all. Perfect response to that conspiratorial remark that I found. Infrared Rising, that comes from Mateo. And Ken M sends some love, and Cami J, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. We will not be able to accomplish anything with the filibuster until it's gone. Everything coming out of the House is messaging bills. Messaging bills it is. Absolutely correct. Spot on. All right, everybody. Thank you to Professor Harvey K, who's been in the chats today on YouTube and Twitch. Big thank you to Mario for working the algorithms. And as always, huge thanks to Bob C, Chokin, The Orb, and Chuck Diesel, and to Dorian Sapiens, A Difficult Troop, Nightbot, Our Means, Nug Wrangler, all on Twitch for keeping the chat room troll free. That is a chat room troll free, chat room troll free, chat room troll free. I'm gonna have a glass of water now. See you tomorrow, everybody. Stay in solidarity. Midi Docs, sending us you. Thank you, Midi Doc. Sorry about that.